Kind of my main object, when I first started doing it is using the pearl buttons. To me, it makes it a little bit more valuable, not financially, but, the history behind it is what is important to me. I sell those down at the museum, and most everything has a pearl button on them somewhere. So when I was growing up, they never taught us anything in school about the button industry. So I knew about it, but never understood, exactly what was going on until I started working here and learned the story. The button industry started this whole revolution with the equipment coming in and being invented, and the fact that we were producing 1.5 billion pearl buttons annually for several years. It was really quite miraculous, I think. And my job here is to tell the story, how this all started and what happened. It was the pearl rush of the Midwest.
Of course, growing up around here, it's hard not to know a little something about the button industry because it was such a dominating force in the economy here. Everybody here and around here always has and always will call them clams. A biologist will tell you these are mussels, these are freshwater mussels. They're filter feeders, which means they suck in water and filter out these sediments and toxins and bacteria and so forth. But they were a very important part of the ecosystem.
They are buried halfway into the mud and they're in a standing position. The animal would just close up on the hooks and capture themselves. No bait was needed. Whole families would be out on the river. Mom and dad, grandma and grandpa, all the kids, the dogs, the cats, would be out on the river until it was too cold to be there. Out of the shell, there's candles, there's little purses, there's necklaces, fishing lures, you name it, belt buckles, all kind of different things. So for his 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, he would be pedaling that machine, holding the iron grips with the shell in it, and would create these marvelous little button blanks. Each and every one would be handled 30 times. Now just envision, we were making 1.5 billion pearl buttons annually, and each one was handled 30 different times.
If you look at these complicated machines they use to make buttons, almost every one you see here was made by a company called the Berry Company. The Berries were a group of Irish immigrants who came to the U.S. about the same time as Beppel. And instead of going into the button making business like everybody else, they made a factory to make button making machines.
It'd come around and the vacuum would pull that button up and drop it into a bucket, and that 8-year-old would take it to the next station. Now in that little book right there, that's Weber Button Company's Dying Bible, and that's what they called it. That acid is listed in there. I asked our director if he could open that up so I could read it, and he tried, but he says, can't do it, it just will not come open. So I said, well, if there's ever a fire in here, that's going home with me. The wringer washer was one of the factors in the demise of the pearl button because women couldn't put their clothing that had pearl buttons on it through the wringers. It would crush them. At one time, the Midwest of the United States had the largest amount of freshwater mussels of any place in the world, and we had around 300 species. Half of those are totally extinct now because of the pearl button industry. Most of the button factories were tore down after they were sold. So it was kind of a sad thing. It was kind of an emptiness feeling, when they were gone.
In a sense, this museum was also a metaphor for the industry in Muscatine. Several companies which are based here, were formed here, that are really fine examples of entrepreneurial spirit that was built up during the button era.
Here are the bits that had to be changed out every once in a while. I don't know how often, but these would be attached to the machine.
I grew up with the Berry family, and I've always been proud of the fact that I've been a descendant from them, and I also feel that somehow I have sort of a little bit of that inventiveness that they have. Anytime a student can use more senses in creating something, it is more meaningful to them. And I love doing hands-on art projects with students. To me, that is very beneficial. Besides teaching about art history, if they can actually create something themselves, it makes it much more meaningful to them. Is it frontwards or backwards for?
Frontwards.
Okay. Then I take my side and do over and through the loop, right?
Yep.
I am trying to use buttons in some of the artwork that my students do. And they're going to make jewelry, keychains, different things like that by combining the buttons into another art form. By using the buttons in a more creative fashion, I think it shows students that they have to be inventive in what they're going to be doing for the future. If you just, talk about the buttons and the history here and everything else, that's important, but if they can get that spark of creativity in a way that they can create something using the buttons, then it really is much more meaningful to them.
Well, it brought in a lot of entrepreneurs and the workforce. And when the button industry closed up, we had these entrepreneurs who started these fantastic multi-million-dollar businesses that are housed here in Muscatine. Without the button industries, these folks probably would not have been here.